We're also here with John Dearie, who's the Senior Vice President for Policy at the Financial Services Forum. John, please explain the forum and its purposes.
The Financial Services Forum is an economic and financial policy association. It's a membership organization, the members being the chief executive officers of the 20 largest financial institutions with business operations in the United States. Most of our members, about 17 of them, are U.S. organizations. We also have 4 European CEOs of European financial institutions, and the CEOs organized themselves in 2000 because there was a common view among them that as this elite group at a very privileged vantage point in the economy, as the CEOs of financial institutions that, by way of their role of allocating capital as the enabling sector, if you will, for the rest of the economy, enjoyed a very unique vantage point on the U.S. economy and global economy, and had important things to say as a group about the major economic and financial policy issues facing the country and the world.
It's a critical time for the financial services system, and you've been doing research in that area. What is that research brought to bear?
Well, particularly on the topic of globalization, the issue of the proper response to free trade, open engagement with the global economy, globalization, to use that more general term, although that term of globalization is really a bigger idea than just trade or free trade. Trade is certainly an important aspect of globalization, but technology, the rapid pace of technological advancement is a massive part of what we think of as globalization in terms of the implications. But it has long been a concern, a very deep concern among our member CEOs, that the 50-year policy consensus in the United States, both among the general population as well as policymakers in Washington and around the country, the consensus in support of policies like free trade, the free flow of capital, cross-border investment, international institutions and cooperation, ironically at a time when so much of the emerging world has really accepted that gospel that the United States has been preaching for 50 years and is reaping the benefits. Unfortunately, that consensus here in the United States and in capitals around the world is in jeopardy.
Globalization is also often associated with dislocation for workers. Do we have adequate policies in place for dislocated workers?
It's our view, that's a very, very good, that is the key question. And it's our view that the answer to the question is a decisive no. You had asked earlier, and let me just provide some numbers about the benefits and the aggregate benefits associated with globalization. Many academic studies have shown that globalization, the policies of free trade and open engagement with the world economy generate enormous benefits for the world and for the United States. George talked about earlier the tremendous poverty alleviation around the world. In China alone, for example, since 1980, as China has emerged by accepting and implementing many of the policies that we've been advocating for 50 years, and the economy has grown tremendously as a result. 400 million people have been lifted out of poverty since 1980 alone, just in China. 40% of the world's poor live in India. And of course, as you know, India is also emerging at a very rapid pace. And so the implications for poverty alleviation and economic development around the world as a result of globalization are mind-boggling, are enormous. Globalization, can be thought of as the greatest poverty alleviation phenomenon in the history of humanity. On the other hand, it does entail significant downsides, and in a local way. And if you think about it, just in terms of the United States, people lose their jobs. Firms go out of business. Entire industries downsize or go away. They go somewhere else. Entire regions, to the extent that a region of the country is dependent on a particular firm or a particular industry can be severely damaged as the global economy reallocates resources and production is shifted to other parts of the world that might be more efficient. So even as we acknowledge the tremendous aggregate gains of globalization, and just for the United States, by the way, that translates into an additional $1 trillion every year in national income. That translates into about $10,000 per American family. Very significant gains. There are people who are hurting. There are people, as George indicated, who are not participating to the full extent. And to get to your question, the programs, the governmental programs that we have in place to deal with workers in transition, the two principal programs are unemployment insurance and trade adjustment assistance, are very old. Unemployment insurance was created in the 1930s and really hasn't been reformed or modernized since. Trade adjustment assistance was created in the 1960s, hasn't been modernized really since, and are very rigid and are designed in a way for an economy that doesn't exist anymore. What we need are 21st century tools that are modern, that are innovative, flexible, and responsive to the needs of the American worker, 50 million of which, every single year, 50 million American workers change jobs.
So you've diagnosed the needs that are there. I understand that you have a white paper coming out that will analyze this.
Yes, it focuses on unemployment insurance, and it makes the point, for example, that unemployment insurance, as it was designed in the 1930s, was designed to provide support for people who were laid off or lost their jobs at a particular employer until circumstances changed when that employer would pick them back up. If you know anything about the global economy, you immediately see how that's insufficient. Firms go away, entire industries downsize. We really need a program that will help folks shift into other aspects of the global economy. Addressing trade adjustment assistance, it too is inadequate. First of all, in order to qualify for trade adjustment assistance, you have to be able to show that you've lost your job due to trade. Many people, and many of them on Capitol Hill, are of the view that trade is a major reason why Americans lose their jobs. In fact, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who tracks these numbers and these reasons for job losses, the percentage of American jobs that are lost each year due to competition from imports, in other words from trade, is less than 3%. 97% of job losses or job movements in the United States are for reasons other than trade. It's technology advances, changing taste of the American consumer, just the basic dynamism and reallocating of resources of a very dynamic global economy. So unemployment insurance that was designed to tide you over until your employer picked you back up, or trade adjustment assistance that you can only qualify for if in fact you've lost your job because of trade. You can immediately see when you just talk about the characterization and the structure of those programs that they're just wholly inadequate. We need a much broader array of policy alternatives, an a la carte menu, if you will, of policy programs that a worker, when he or she loses their job or is in transition, can pick and choose from a variety of programs that specifically meet their needs in terms of facilitating their transition out of wherever they were in the global economy and getting back into a growing aspect of the global economy, productive aspect of the global economy. And that takes a lot of innovative thinking, and it's going to take some hard work on Capitol Hill, but we think it's absolutely essential if we're going to preserve this consensus for open engagement.
Is it a state program that's going to be needed here, or is it going to be the private sector?
Well, it's a very, very good question, and I think that there's this conference that George has put together, I think one of the underlying assumptions is that in order to tackle these problems, in terms of an adequate policy response to the challenges of globalization, is really going to take an unprecedented partnership between the private sector and government. Policies have to be developed that facilitate private sector solutions to these problems, and the government and the private sector has got to be a source of some of those ideas and has got to be a partner in terms of the implementation. In terms of specifically what the forum is advocating, and the white paper is not yet out, but it'll be out next week, and I encourage folks to go to our website at financialservicesforum.org and download it.